How you doing? Welcome back to another walk and talk on this channel where I talk about things. And I'm coming to you live. It is the 23rd of March, 2025. And here I am, live in northern Israel. The weather is bright and sunny. However, the state of the country is at war again, as you know. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. But last week, Israel and the Hamas started fighting again in Gaza. And since then, there have been a number of rockets fired from Gaza into Israel, a number of attacks by the Israeli Air Force into Gaza, and soldiers on the ground doing what they're doing, tanks and infantry. And the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, has said he is going to basically fight with no holds barred now. And at the same time, up here in the north, we've had more rocket attacks coming to us from Lebanon. Lebanon and Hizbullah saying, "Oh, it wasn't us, it wasn't us." They claim it was some other random group. You gotta remember there's a ton of Palestinian terror organizations or jihadi terrorist organizations in Lebanon. There's Hamas people in Lebanon. There's Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Lebanon. I mean, there's still people, in the PFLP and the DFLP in Lebanon, right? And the PLO operates there. So there's no shortage of terrorist organizations there. And there's more, by the way, but whatever. The point is, Hezbollah is trying to disassociate itself from the rocket attacks onto Israel because they know that Israel is going to unleash hell, so to speak. They're going to drop a lot of ordnance on Lebanon if the so-called ceasefire that we have there is violated. But of course, Israel doesn't care who fired it. The point is the UN has not done their job, of course, at preventing anybody from firing things. They have not done their job at ensuring that the Hezbollah takes all of its assets north of the Litani River. So Israel keeps finding things and destroying them. Pretty much every day during the ceasefire, Israel did blow up things there. They weren't necessarily shooting at Hezbollah fighters. Oh, hello, doggy. Hello. Hi. Hi. Hello. Hi. Hello. Good dog. Good dog. A good dog. Yeah, see you. Shalom. I love when random dogs interrupt me to say hello. So, anyway, Israel is dropping ordnance on Lebanon, or really using infantry that it has on the ground, that it keeps stationed in 5 tiny little outposts along the southern area of the country, pretty much on the southern border. And they're really just forward command posts, and they're tiny little operating bases. They're not even, I wouldn't call them a forward command. They're forward operating bases. They're FOBs, right? And they're there on the ground just to be able to quickly get to different locations and to do their patrols from and all that kind of stuff, to make sure that the Hezbollah are not targeting specific areas, that they're not doing certain things. So Israel is knocking out a lot of their arsenal that's over there. I see your message. Good morning to you. Can't see what that says, but hello to you. Anyway, So at the moment, Israel is engaged in war with Hamas in Gaza, with Hezbollah and other proxies in Lebanon, with a posturing situation vis-a-vis Syria and the HTS terrorist group that now controls Syria. And they are a terrorist group, and I'm not going to call them not, just because they say they're not, given the evidence of what they've done in the past and currently. They are a terrorist organization. They are Islamic State in Syria. They're a derivative of it. And they now control Syria. So now we have a jihadi Islamic regime controlling Syria that claims that it wants to have no war with Israel. Of course, you know that's just temporary because they're jihadis. So, of course, they want to reclaim what they believe is Arab land, even though Jews have been here for thousands and thousands of years. And yes, there was a period of time when the Arabs were in control. That does not make it theirs and only theirs forever. Do people who have been living here for centuries, who happen to be either Arab or Muslim or both, have some kind of legitimate claim on the land? If by conquest you have a claim on land? Well, sure, I guess you could argue that, sure. And in any case, if people have actually been living here for centuries, then they can certainly say that they have a right, because the people that were born here, in Judea and Samaria, they certainly have a right to live where they live. But here's the part that pisses off a lot of people. When a people launches a war against another people for no reason other than hate, which is why the Arabs launched a war against the Jews in 1948, the Muslim Arabs, pretty much most of them who launched that war were Muslim Arabs, they launched a war against the Jews because of hate. They hate Jews. They hate the idea that Jews might control our own ancestral homeland. Why? Because they once controlled it. Well, it's our ancestral homeland, and we've always been here. Even when you controlled it, you even put Aleph Yud on your coins, which stood for Eretz Yisrael. And you can literally see it on old coins that survive from the time when the Arabs from Saudi Arabia came to this land and conquered it. And when they minted their coins here, they literally could have put anything on there, but they included a menorah and they included Aleph Yud for Eretz Yisrael, because even they recognized that Jews are tied to this land. Jews have a connection with this land. We've been here for thousands of years. It is our ancestral homeland. It's the birthplace of the Jews. Jews are from Judea, right? It's not hard to think to understand. Jews are from Judea. Like, duh. Jews are from originally the tribe of Judah, right? Judah was the forefather of the Jews. Before that, we were Israelites. And before that, we call ourselves Israelites. And Hebrews, right? The Hebrew people. Like this, Abraham was a Hebrew, right? He was the first Hebrew. He was the father of the Hebrew people. Who are the Hebrew people? We became the Jews and the Israelites, right? And we became the people of the tribes. Nowadays, most of the tribes are scattered and lost. We don't have all the individual tribes anymore. We basically have 3 tribes, right? The Cohens, the Kohanim, the Levis, or the Levi's, or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, Levi. The Kohanim were the high priests. The Levi's were the clerics, if you will, the managers, the administrators, the lawyers and such of the temple. And then all the other tribes now that existed before, we call them Israel, House of Israel, right? Israel. Why? Because all the other tribes have been so scattered and dispersed throughout the ages that it's practically impossible to know who belongs to which specific other tribe. But Kohanim and Levi, we know specifically which is which, because when Jews pray in a synagogue, a temple, or Beit Knesset, as they say in Hebrew, There are specific prayers for the Kohanim that the Kohanim have to do. There are specific things that Levites have to do. So they've always known who they are intergenerationally because of that connection. And the rest of the tribes of Israel, who didn't have specific tribe-specific things they had to do, sort of fit into the general population, and that's the house of Israel. That represents the rest, all the Jews who aren't Kohanim or Levites these days. So essentially, there used to be more tribes. Now we're basically 3. It's still people of the tribe. We're still all in the same tribe. It's just that the Kohanim have a particular role and the Levites have a particular role. I'm talking about the traditional religious community. They have specific roles that they do. Like there's certain blessings that Kohanim say, or there's certain, rituals that the Levites oversee or whatever. Traditional stuff. Anyway, I don't know why I went off on that deep tangent. Well, I do actually know why. Point is, when the Arabs started to fight their war against Israel in 1948, right? They started it based on hatred. Their tribe versus our tribe, but in a genocidal maniac kind of way. Hot on the heels of World War II, they were deeply influenced, and they deeply influenced Hitler and his Third Reich and his Nazi Party and his SS and all those evil things that Eichmann put into place for the so-called final solution to murder and exterminate every last Jew on an industrial scale. And so when the Nazis lost, literally the Arabs took up the mantle of Nazi fascism. To this day, they have Mein Kampf books in practically every home in Gaza. And across Judea and Samaria, it's also very common to find it. And in every school. And when I say they have a copy of it, I don't mean like they study it in order to know what to do, and they do academic disputations to understand the subtleties and nuances, and to be able to, learn from that horrible document what kind of a psychopath its author was, right? No, they have it because they revere it. To them, it's practically a holy book. Hitler is like, a hero to them because he killed Jews by the millions, right? Like, as disgusting as it sounds, it's the truth. Hello. Am I a Jewish? I am. I am Jewish. I am a Jew. I am not a Jewish. That's not a thing. Am I Jewish? Yes, I am Jewish. Very. Why does this dude look safe to be around? Okay. Well, I am safe to be around. Except when I'm not. And the times I'm not, well, thankfully I don't need to do those things anymore, like army related stuff. But even then, I was a safe person to be around, in the sense that I would always operate as safely as I could. So yes, I am a safe person to be around. At least I like to think so. I make every effort to be. Now, you got to remember, like, this tiny little country that I'm in right now has around 10 million or so inhabitants. And currently, there's a front with Gaza. Right? There's a front They got an open military front with Gaza, specifically Hamas in Gaza. There's an open and hostile military front in Lebanon. There's an open and hostile military front with Syria, although it's a low burner one at the moment. We're trying to hold it at bay. Israel does continue to conduct raids inside of Syria in order to eliminate old assets that the Syrian army left behind. So they're not outwardly operating against the HTS directly. Israel is taking out rockets and weapons depots that the Syrian army left behind, some of which have already been secured, quote unquote, by HTS soldiers who are standing guard over those things. And then as soon as they hear an Israeli plane, well, they probably run away unless they want to be ended from an incoming ordnance that's going to blow up a whole lot more ordnance. And Israel currently has an open and hostile military front against Palestinian terror groups in Judea and Samaria. And Israel has open hostile military fronts against the Iranian Islamic government, which has threatened Israel time and time again and attacked Israel time and time again, and funds terror proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis. Oh yes, and let's not forget Israel has an open and hostile military front against the Houthis, which are the Islamic terrorist jihadi group that currently controls a good chunk of Yemen, including the capital city Sana'a. And they are also shooting things towards Israel. And they've threatened other nations, including the United States and the UK and France, and anyone who continues to ship things to Israel or to fly into Ben Gurion Airport. And you want to talk about committed to crazy? These guys are committed to the bit like nobody else. On the one hand, people laugh, haha, the Houthis, what can they do? On the other hand, for all their bluster, they did actually manage to kill somebody in Tel Aviv last year, right, with a bomb that they fired on a drone. They flew all the way from Yemen across the Sinai Peninsula, probably by mistake, over Egypt, and then back into Israel via the Mediterranean Sea, which again was very probably by accident that they actually managed to do it. They probably intended to fly straight up the Red Sea and land somewhere in Israel, targeting Eilat or somewhere slightly north of there. But they ended up, maybe not. Maybe they actually. And the Houthis blew up a drone in an area literally in the center of Tel Aviv, not far from the beach, and the American consulate, which used to be the American embassy, right there on the beach. In a building in an area that's very well known. In fact, the building they blew up, a good friend of mine used to live there. Thankfully, he does not live there anymore. But yeah, it hit like the building. I think it directly hit the building next to his, or maybe even hit his building. I think it hit his building, and it killed the person living there in the building next door, where it also directly hit with the actual pipe part of the bomb. So yeah, people laugh at the Houthis because they're mostly ineffective, but they're not completely ineffective. There are, in fact, some dangerous things that they are capable of and that they have done. And we know that in Yemen, they have obviously done a lot of their terrible things. So, for those reasons, we have to take them seriously, even if they're a quote-unquote laughingstock in the military world. They're still dangerous. As much as people might want to think of them as a laughingstock, they are still, in fact, dangerous. And one should ignore them at their own peril. Because they're still shooting rockets that they didn't, that they're shooting at Israel. And sometimes they do, in fact, land like near Israel, well on their way. Sometimes they get into Israel. They've done damage in a lot. Yeah, most people are not bothered by them so much, but they are not benign. If you get hit by a rocket fired at you, even from an incompetent group, even one little rocket can ruin your day. Just saying. So don't think that just because the Houthis are the butt of a bunch of jokes in the world of war here, that they're harmless. They're not harmless. They are definitely not harmless. Oh, when my dog goes out for a walk. What a good boy. So yeah. So Israel has all those fronts. So again, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Judea, Samaria, Iran, Yemen. That's at least 7 fronts. And not to mention threats in other locations. So we'll just call that the 8th amorphous front, which is very real, which exists in many places in countries around the world that attack or target Jews and Jewish interests, Israelis, right? Like, the Mossad, the Israeli sort of CIA, exists to protect Israelis, right, by gathering intelligence externally from Israel, much like the CIA gathers intelligence externally from the United States. But the Mossad has a special dual purpose as well, which is not just to protect Israelis, but also to protect Jews, because the whole point of the state of Israel is for Jews to be able to have self-determination. And there are many Jews around the world who have not made Aliyah, who have not migrated to Israel for one reason or another. In some cases, they can't. In other cases, they just don't want to. But they're still Jewish people, and they come under threats. Whether they like it or not, even if they don't identify as Jews, even if they say, I hate the Jews, and they're self-hating Jews. There's plenty of self-hating Jews, right? Don't ignore that, right? It's when I say plenty, it's a minority, but there's still plenty. There's still a bunch of them. Even the self-hating Jews deserve protection from anti-Semitic attacks in the view of the Jewish people and in the view of the Israeli government. We are European colonizers, not Jew. Am I a settler? You're hilarious. What do you mean by settler? You mean, do I live in Judea or Samaria? I live in northern Israel. I don't live in Judea and Samaria, though. At the moment, I live in northern Israel. Also, I'm not a European colonizer. In fact, Jews come from Judea. I know that might be difficult for you to understand, Mohammed. But Jews are from the tribe of Judah, who come from Judea. It's hard to understand that, right? And we have always had a connection to this land. No, I don't live in northern Palestine. Northern Palestine, if there was ever to be a state called Palestine, and by the way, if you know of a state called Palestine that was actually a state, show me its, who was its king or prime minister or president. Show me the country on a map. And you can't show me British Mandate Palestine, because that's British. It's a British colony. So if you're saying Palestine is British, well, okay. You could say Palestine is British, but guess what? The Brits gave up their claim to the land when they left in 1948. And you know why they left? They left in order for the Arabs and the Jews to have two separate states. One that would be created called Palestine, and one that would be reestablished for the Jewish people on their ancestral homeland, and the name of that country would be Israel. And that is what Israel is. And the land that would have been called Palestine was rejected by the Arabs. Right? The British called the word Palestine basically a dirty British invention, which, as we know, it wasn't invented by the British, but it goes back much older than that. And the very name Palestine is meant to be an insult to the Jews. Like, what kind of people base their identity on insulting? It's pretty messed up. I live in northern Palestine. No, I don't live. Oh, you live in Shechem. Okay. You know that Nablus, it's hilarious because you call it Nablus because the Palestinian people can't pronounce the letter P. Nablus is Naples, as in Napoli, as in Italian, as in Latin, as in the Romans gave it that name. You know why they gave it that name? To obliterate the Jewish ancestral connection to the town that is literally written about in the Tanakh, the Torah, the Old Testament of the Jews don't refer to it as the Old Testament. We just refer to it as the Bible because to us that's the Bible. And then there's the Christian one, which is the addendum. And then there's the Quranic one, which is, I don't know what you want to call that, fan fiction. They're all fiction to me, by the way, bro. To me, I don't think any of that stuff. Anyway, so Nablus is the name given by the Romans. Naples was the name given by the Romans to obliterate the Jewish connection to the ancient biblical city of Shechem. You can read about Shechem in the Bible. It's in there. You might not like it, but that's a fact. So when Palestinians get offended, supposedly, by hearing the word Shechem instead of Nablus, well, deal with it, bro. That's what it's been called for longer than Nablus was ever a name. What am I doing? I'm talking. Your family has lived in Nablus for over that. Congratulations. Hey, Mohammed, I'm not saying your family doesn't have a right to claim that you've lived in Nablus for over 1,000 years at all. And if your family lives in Nablus peacefully, God bless you. And yet you may very well be descendants of Canaanites. In fact, I bet you there's a very high chance that some of your ancestors were Jews who were forcibly converted to Islam by Muhammad and his army when they conquered this land. Ain't no shame in that, bro. The fact is, you might just be in denial of that, but that's okay. I doubt very much that your family came from the kingdom of Saudi Arabia or from the kingdom of, from the Saudi Peninsula, which is Arabia, which is where Arabs are from. People who call themselves Arabs here in the Middle East, most of them are actually not Arabs. They're people who were conquered. They're people from all kinds of different ethnic minorities, not just Jews and not just Christians, right? You have Assyrians, you have Druze, you have all different little tribes here, Zoroastrian, for Islam even, many of them. And they were conquered and obliterated, exterminated by the Muslims, by the conquering hordes of Islam. And those people that were conquered by the Arabs, they're not ethnically Arab, right? Yes, they may have fathers, great grandfathers, somewhere however many generations ago, that were Arabs, and then impregnated women who bore children who were then half Arab and half whatever they came from on their mother's side. And over the generations, by Islamization, by forcing everybody to be Muslim, they called themselves Arabs by Arabization, but they're not really 100% pure Arabs, right? And again, no hate towards Arabs or anybody else, man. There's no such thing as ethnic Palestinian, bro. There's no such thing. You say you're ethnic Palestinian. There's no such thing as ethnic Palestinian. It's not a thing. You might be Levantines, you might be Levantine Arabs, you might be 100% Arabs, you might be some other mixture. I'm not claiming to know exactly your DNA, but I bet you your DNA can tell you. And again, I don't say that people who live in Nablus don't have a right to live in Nablus. If you live in peace there, okay, you're not Arabs. Okay, there you go. So if you're not Arabs and you call yourself Palestinians, right, then your family came from somewhere. They didn't just appear out of nowhere. If your family were descended from Canaanites, all right, how did they become Palestinian? What do you call Palestinian? That's a very good conversation. By the way, no hate on here, man. I don't hate people who call themselves Palestinians. I don't hate even Israelis who call themselves settlers or whatever. To me, people are people. What do I want? I would like this world to be in peace. I would like for the extremists to stop extreming. I would like for people who want to just kill other people for no reason other than their existence to stop doing that and to live in peace side by side, in peace and prosperity. And I know many people who are Israeli and who are Palestinian who work together. I've worked with many Arabs, Israeli Arabs, and people who call themselves Palestinian Arabs. I've worked with many of them across different companies in Israel, in high tech, in low tech, all kinds of. You also want peace. Who wants peace? What do you mean by you want peace? And I'm glad to hear that you say you want peace. What does peace mean? I ask that because not ironically, right? When you say you want peace, what does that mean? Do you want what Hamas wants, which is they say they want peace. They want to kill every Jew and every Israeli in the process. Is that what you want? You want to kill every Jew and every Israeli or not? Are you a real person who actually wants peace? Like a real peace? And I'm not saying it to be sarcastic or ironic or to poke fun. You want to be 100%, bro. I want you to be treated equally, and I want us to be treated equally. Tell me, why can't Jews live in Area A? Why is it forbidden for Jews to go to Area A in Judea and Samaria? Do you know why? You know why. You want freedom. Yeah, we want freedom too, man. And we want you to have freedom. I want you to have freedom. Okay, I won't speak for the entire Israeli population, but I will tell you that in general, Israelis that I know want Palestinians to live in peace side by side, in peace and prosperity. But the reality is we've been attacked endlessly, unprovoked for so many years that unfortunately the leadership of the Palestinians, nobody here blames it on the individual Palestinian. Right? And I hope you don't blame it on the individual Israeli, because people are all individuals. The average Palestinian is just a person like me, right? We just want to live in peace and quiet and have our lives. But the leaders cause the problems. And the unfortunate reality is the Israeli leaders, and I blame them too, and the Palestinian leaders and foreign leaders maintain this conflict. And the primary motivator of that is unfortunately the extremists who don't want to be on a land with Jews in Israel. They don't. Their ideology prevents them from doing that, and specifically their religious ideology. You have also been attacked and murdered and imprisoned for no reason. Bro, Mohammed, I am not denying that Israel has done bad things to Palestinian. No, we did not. Okay. I know you view it from that point of view. It's just for being Palestinian. Listen, I 100% agree with you that Israel has done stupid and terrible and awful things to Palestinian people that it should not have done. Criminal things. And in some cases, there has been justice in courts, and in some cases, there has not been justice delivered. Right? There's been justice sought and not delivered. I agree with that. But Israel does not have an ideology of eradicating the Palestinian people. It's like the old Golda Meir saying, right? And you know it, I'm sure, as well as I do, or I hope you do. If Israel were to put down its weapons today, there would be peace. If there would be a genocide, right? If Israel were to put down its weapons, there would be genocide. The Arabs would eliminate all of us and destroy this country and make it part of an Islamic caliphate. If the Arabs would put down their weapons, there would be peace. Right? So just so we're clear, you would not. Okay, you say you would not, and I'm glad you say that. The reality is Why is it not fair to say? What did October 7th show? October 7th showed exactly that. Israel put down its guard for a moment, idiotically, and I blame the Israeli leader for messing that up because he knew, in my opinion. And people say, oh, he didn't know. People want to defend him. I don't defend the guy. I don't defend Bibi for that. He failed miserably. He promised he could deliver peace and security. He failed on both fronts, utterly devastatingly. But October 7th demonstrated that there's inaccuracy to your statement that the Arabs would not attempt to genocide the Jews, because that's exactly what happened on October 7th, and that's why we're in this god-awful war that we're still in. And I'm not saying the conflict started on October 7th, obviously, but I'm saying the latest round of it started on that day because of the ideology of the Hamas, which is to kill all of the Jews and every other Israeli and every other person who happens to be in Israel and forcibly convert them or kill them or make them dhimmis. And thanks, but no thanks. So when you say it's not fair to say, it is fair to say. Unfortunately, history says it is fair to say. Gaza was basically, so Gaza was a concentration camp. Okay, have you seen the pictures and videos of Gaza before October 7th? For a concentration camp, what concentration camp has universities? What concentration camp has mansions in it by the sea? What concentration camp in it has rich neighborhoods? It was not a concentration camp. And by the way, if you say it was, ask yourself this: why didn't the people in charge of that concentration camp take the billions of dollars they received every year to make it a nice place for everybody? Why did they only keep that money among themselves? Because of the corruption of Hamas and the corruption of the Palestinian leadership. It was not a concentration camp. And if you're going to tell me, Israel blockaded Gaza, when did Israel blockade Gaza? Israel blockaded Gaza after the Hamas took over and continued firing rockets at Israel. And Israel said, we're not going to put up with this, so we're going to blockade you. And by the way, Egypt can at any time open its border with Gaza and has chosen not to. And Egypt is where many of the people in Gaza are from, like the al-Masri family or the al-Misri family, which means literally the Egyptians, right? Egypt has a border with Gaza, and it is in fact more blockaded than the Israeli border. Israel, until October 7th, would let in literally thousands and thousands of Palestinians every day from Gaza into Israel, which is how many of them spied on Israel and gave that information to the Hamas. Sold it to the Hamas, I should say. Right? And they went into kibbutzim and moshavim and neighborhoods, and they spied on Israel, and they brought that information to the Hamas terrorists. And they sold it to them so that Hamas could attack Israel better on October 7th. Gaza was basically concentrated. Yeah, 2005 is when Israel withdrew. There was no blockade on the Gaza Strip in 2005. Not at all. When the Palestinian Authority took over, there was no blockade. Gazans still continued coming into Israel. Goods still kept flowing into Gaza from Israel and from the rest of the world, no problem. Egypt blockaded the Egyptian border with Gaza as soon as the Hamas took over, and they took over violently, even though they were elected. Their election was in dispute by the Palestinian Authority. Regardless, the Hamas won that election, but the Palestinian Authority disputed the election, etc. It doesn't matter. The Hamas eventually kicked out all the Palestinian Authority people, mostly by killing them, if you don't remember that. I remember that. They threw many of them off the roofs, just like they threw gay and lesbian and other people from the LGBTQ community off of rooftops. I remember that. I saw that. And so Israel did not occupy Gaza since 2005. And I would argue it never occupied it. It was disputed territory, not occupied territory, but that's because that's a legal definition of terms. But you want to call it occupied, knock yourself out. The fact is Israel has not occupied or settled Gaza since 2005. Not one Jew has been willingly living in Gaza since 2005. The only Jews living in Gaza or alive in Gaza since 2005 are soldiers who had to go in and fight on occasional short wars that Hamas had launched against Israel, or hostages. Some of them have been soldiers, and most of them have been civilians. hostages that Hamas has taken into Gaza. That's it. Those are the only Israelis who've been in Gaza since 2005. Soldiers fighting against the Hamas that's attacking Israel and other Palestinian groups in Gaza, and hostages taken from Israel. There's no other Jews or Israelis or people who happened to be in Israel at the time, like the Thai workers. What the hell did the Thai workers have to do with this conflict? They were literally farming. They were doing farming work, local farming work. Why the hell did the Hamas attack them? Why did the Hamas take Arab Israelis hostage? Why did they kill Arab Israelis? Muslims. Hamas is wrong. I'm glad you say Hamas is wrong, bro. Hamas is wrong. Hamas is evil. I think you and I could easily find peace because you sound like a reasonable person. Yes, the Israeli government does wrong things. I agree with you. But the Israeli government does not actually have an ideology bent on eliminating every Muslim and every Arab living in Judea and Samaria. Remember, we have 2 million Arabs in Israel who are citizens of Israel, most of whom are Muslim, some of whom are Christian, some of whom are atheists. 2 million out of the 10 million people living in Israel are Muslims. No, Netanyahu does not have a religion that he belongs to that believes in annihilating every single person on the other side. We do not pray every day for the annihilation of the Palestinian people. Okay? Netanyahu, I am not a fan of. I think he should be held accountable for his misdeeds. I am not a fan of him. I'm saying that to you very directly. But at the same time, and when I say I'm not a fan, I mean I'm extremely critical of him. I think he's done some terrible things. Do I also think he's done good things for Israel in the past? Yes, I do think he has done good things for Israel in the past. And yes, even in the prosecution of this war, I think he has managed certain things extremely well. He has, from an Israeli point of view, of course, like going after the Hizbullah and taking out all their top leadership. I think that was very well done. But that doesn't mean I'm not critical of him. I'm extremely critical of him, and I think he should be held accountable. And I think the reason that is convenient for him that this war keeps going on is because it allows him to futz around with the legal system against in the cases that are pending against him, that are currently against him in court. So you and I, we don't disagree about that in some ways. I'm sure we find many disagreements, but you sound relatively reasonable. A Palestinian who says Hamas is wrong, yeah, you just want to live on your land in peace. Bro, if that's all you want, God bless you. That's all I want too. Are you willing to live side by side next to the state of Israel? Because I'm willing to live side by side next to the state of Palestine. My only condition is in peace. Yeah, I want to live side by side in peace with the Palestinians. Great. If you want to live in peace side by side with Israel, then you and I, bro, we can, we are the change. We are the change. There need to be 20 million more people like us, and we can be that change. And we need to have our voices lead our people. All right? Meaning people who have our mentality. Some politicians with that mentality have to be in charge. The only problem is, in this part of the world, name the country Jerusalem. Bro, that's hilarious. I actually said, well, never mind. I don't want to get into that debate right now. But anyway. Did I delete the Hebrew? I did not delete any Hebrew, no. Genesis 6:11, the earth was also corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Yeah, bro, and that's the thing about the Bible. To me, it's great literature. It was a handy guidebook for people in primitive times. But the reality is, to me anyway, it's look, like every great work of fiction, it has grains of truth in it. So we know certain names, dates, and places and people. We know they existed because of archaeological records. Obviously, we know Jerusalem is real. Jerusalem is still where Jerusalem always was, right? So, example, right? We know King David was King David. We know all that evidence, right? We have archaeological evidence of it. Yeah, your mother's Christian, your father's Muslim, you live in peace. That's amazing. I think that's awesome. And I wish nothing but peace and prosperity for you, bro. I mean that. And I wish our people had leaders who were rational thinkers and could see past the hate and the violence. The only problem is, well, it says you don't hate Jews and you love Jews, and what you hate is occupation. Yeah, bro, nobody wants to occupy anybody else. I can tell you the average Israeli soldier who's in the Shtachim in Judea and Samaria does not want to be there. I can tell you that. They do not want to be there. They're there because they're protecting Israel from the threats, the active threats, and the active attacks of Palestinian terrorists. They're not there for no reason. They didn't just show up there for no reason. They're there because we have active threats by terrorist organizations who want to attack Israel and who actively attack Israel every single day. And do I think that sometimes they're heavy-handed? Yeah, I do. I do think that sometimes they're heavy-handed, and they shouldn't be. But I also think sometimes they're doing the right thing. The hour is late, seconds to midnight. Last I checked, if you know, you know. Okay, sure. Just saying, NT says in the last days are like the days of Noah. Look around, getting pretty dark. I hear you, Triv Gun, but look, they are works of literature. You can call them fiction or not, I don't care. But not everything in the Bible is provable. Not everything in the New Testament is provable. Not everything in the Quran is provable. A lot of it in all of those works is disprovable. And if you don't agree with that, how are you watching this on a internet connected device? Science disproves a lot of what's in those old books, right? Science disproves a lot of what's in those old books. Perspectives change a lot of what's in those old books. Do you believe in slavery? No, because pretty much all of those old books do. All of those old books give specific instruction for how to manage your slaves, how to beat them, and how to not kill them, and all these terrible ways to own slaves. Hold on. I'm not just drinking a coffee. I'm drinking a mason jar of coffee because I like to have a lot, and I like to keep it warm with the lid. Literally all the old books give instruction about how to basically treat your slaves and treat your property, your chattel, right? They approve of slavery. However, Judaism turned its back on slavery a long, long time ago and has viewed it as a terrible thing ever since. And yes, you can say, well, I thought the Torah was perfect. Well, no, Jews don't say the Torah can never be changed. That's what the Talmud and the Mishnah are all about, right? The whole point of those things is to interpret what's in the Torah and bring it up to date with modern thinking. Christianity also has many outdated ways of thinking, right? The Quran also. The difference is Christianity also gave up its ways about slavery for the most part, right? There aren't any Christian nations that take slaves anymore. Christians gave up slavery, right? There were wars fought to give up slavery. But the Quran still embraces it, and the Muslims have not had any kind of thing like a Talmud or a Mishnah or an update to, like the Concord at Worms or the papal councils that update interpretations of the New Testament. They haven't had that in the Islamic faith. They are extremists who lead the religion, and they refuse to have any kind of update. The slave owners' Bible in America had Exodus completely removed. The Lord saved the slaves. Maybe the Lord saved the slaves, Triv Gun. Maybe. Maybe just human decency got to a point where we realized it is wrong to own another human being. It is wrong to treat a human being as a piece of property and to abuse them and mistreat them and do god-awful things to them and very often end them. It is wrong. There's no two ways about it. The abolitionist movement was born out of Christianity. 100%. The modern abolitionist movement was born out of Christianity. The ancient abolitionist movement, which wasn't even called that, it was just Judaism being Judaism, is when the Jews stopped owning slaves. We just stopped. Now you can say, well, we had slaves until we were kicked out by the Romans. Okay, arguably. Not even arguably.
I'll just say yes, okay? Because we know for a fact, historically, there was still some very well-to-do Jews, even in Jerusalem, not far from the wall, not far from the temple, who were very wealthy, and they took on very many habits of the Romans and the Greeks before them, and they had slaves. And that's true. And I'm not going to tell you, but slaves in Roman times were different. No, slaves were slaves, and they were property. And okay, they may have had better conditions under the Romans than in later slave periods, but they were still slaves. Ultimately, they were still the property of their owners. And as much as people like to whitewash the slavery of Roman times and of Greek times and ancient times and Israel and ancient Hebrew times and ancient Israelite times, it was still slavery, and it was bad. And the Jewish people turned our backs on slavery. We do not believe in slavery. We think it is wrong. We teach our children it is wrong. We teach ourselves it is wrong. We are against slavery. We are enjoined in the fight against slavery where it exists. And Christians did, in fact, create the modern abolitionist movement against slavery. It's true. Wasn't Israel the only nation in ancient days that actually had a code of conduct for? I'm telling you, yes, Trivgun, that's what I'm telling you. The ancient Bible had literally a code of conduct for slaves. Other nations didn't even have a code of conduct. They just treated them however the hell they wanted. But Israel had a literal section in the Bible, has a section, still, you can read it today, about how to treat your slaves. But so does the Christian religion, and so does Islam. And Islam still has slaves. If you go to Saudi Arabia, there's still slaves on a market, an open market where you can buy slaves. You go to Libya, you can buy slaves in markets. You go across North Africa, there's many places where Shia Muslims from places like Lebanon and Syria and other places, they own slave markets in Africa. They believe in slavery still to this day. So I'm saying those old guidebooks have many things in them that are clearly, patently, objectively wrong, according to most people on earth. Some people still follow the disgusting ways of what's written in some of those books, namely things like slavery from the Quran. Jesus said, divorce was only given due to hardness of heart. Why can't the slave laws be under the same purpose? I don't know what you mean by that, Trived Gun. There shouldn't be any slaves. There shouldn't be any slaves. There's no reason to own another human being. It's just wrong and evil. By the way, not all Christian movements disavowed slavery like 200 years ago when the abolitionist movement happened. Even in the last century, there was slavery among Christian nations. The Nazis treated the Jews like slaves. We had literally my Jewish forefathers who were in the Holocaust were in slave labor camps, right? And you could argue that today even the Chinese have slave labor camps or concentration camps of Uyghur Muslims. So Muslims are violent, are victims of slavery too, from people who aren't even Christian or Jewish or Muslim, from the Chinese, who treat Muslims in China like slaves. Not even like slaves. They enslave them. They force them into concentration camps and make them do things that they don't want to do. That's slavery. That's kidnapping and slavery. And there's more than 1 million. There's, I think, 1.5 million Muslim Uyghurs right now in concentration camps in China. Where's the selective outrage about that? You hear about it once every blue moon, and then it goes away. Every single Palestinian that dies, it makes world headlines. And I'm not saying it shouldn't, but where's the selective outrage? Why don't we hear about all the Muslims who die in China or in Syria or in Yemen or in Lebanon? Oh, because they're not free nations and they don't have a free press. Israel is a free nation and does have a free press that is very, very, very self-critical. Do I know the Quran? Yes, Jake Plain, I have read the Quran multiple times, just as I've read the New Testament multiple times, just as I've read the Bible multiple times. But I'm not going to sit here and debate it with you. Not all Palestinians are, of course, Mohammed, not all Palestinians are Muslims. Of course not. I have dear friends they call themselves Palestinian, man, and they are not all Muslims. Some of them are Christian, some of them are atheists, some of them are other things. Some of them are a mixture, like you. You said you're a Muslim and a Christian, right? That must be really nice. By the way, I hope you had a happy Ramadan. And I hope you'll have a happy Easter next month. I wish peace and blessings on you and all of your people, man. Just as I do on the Israeli people and all people. So, Mohammed, I think you and I could easily be like, not easily. We are the types of people that there need to be more of in this region. And you and I know that there are lots of people who want peace in this area. If you're being honest, and I think you are, you know, and I know, there are millions and millions of people who just want to live in peace here. Jake Plain, no, you're a Christian, just asking, no offense. No offense taken, Jake Plain. None whatsoever, and thank you for asking. Yes, I have studied the holy books of the Abrahamic religions, of the major Abrahamic religions. Yeah, and you and I, Mohammed, you know, and I know that most people here just want to live in peace. We just want to get along. We don't have time for this conflict BS. We literally don't have time for it. Unfortunately, we still have leaders on all sides. Yes, most of us just want peace. Exactly. Not all of us, unfortunately. There are some crazy idiots who don't want peace. And that includes on the Israeli side. And I don't deny that, bro. I don't deny that. But the fact is there is a specific difference. We cannot ignore the 500-pound gorilla in the room. Yes, the leaders are messed up on both sides. And unfortunately, the ideology of the extremists that are on that say they're on the Palestinian side, they're the ones who keep extending the conflict the most because it's their aggressive actions, it's their terrorism that gives excuse, if you will, to all the reactions against it. Like, if the terrorists would stop terrorizing, Israel would have no excuse to attack and would not seek to attack Palestinians. We don't have an interest in doing it. And again, I say that with the caveat that, of course, there are people in the Israeli government who do. There are a lot of settlers that do not want this. Of course, there are a lot of settlers who are problematic, just as there are. But the settlers, even the settlers, do not have an ideology of like a religion of extermination, and they are not the majority of the society. Okay, they are a fringe element of the society, and it's the ones that actually want to be extremely violent. They are a very fringe element, and you and I know it. They don't control the government. Yes, there are, unfortunately, extremist settlers in the government, and I think that's a horrible, terrible thing. And I think people like Ben Gvir and Smotrich should be out of the government. They should not be in government. But they don't control the government. They are not the prime minister. They are not the president, which is mostly symbolic, but still. They do not control the government. But they are in the cabinet, and that's very bad. They're in the government, and that's very bad. They should not be in the government. I agree with you. Yeah, they're terrible people. I mean, they're terrorists. They were convicted of terrorism. To me, they should never be in any office. They should be, they should serve their time for their crimes, go on with their lives, but that doesn't give them a reason to be back in government. No way. It's untenable that in Israeli society we allow people who've been convicted of terrorism in Israeli courts to be in government. That is not okay. It's not okay. Oh, democracy, my butt. You don't elect people who've committed terrorism. That's the exact same thing that Israel is saying about the Palestinians in Gaza, right? We're saying the Palestinians in Gaza elected Hamas. Hamas are a bunch of terrorists. What did you expect? Well, Israel elected Ben Gvir and Smotrich. They are literally terrorists. Well, you can say that about Ben Gvir, right? We should not make excuses, right? We should not be hypocritical, right? Ben Gvir does not belong in government. Yeah. Like, I'm not okay with the whole extreme right in Israel. I'm just not okay with it. They've done terrible things. But even so, They don't literally want to exterminate every Arab that calls themselves a Palestinian, right? We have 2 million Arab Israelis, many of whom call themselves Palestinian, by the way. We don't want to exterminate them. They serve in the army with us in many cases. They serve in government. Many of them are doctors. When I go to a doctor, half the time it's an Arab Israeli. Literally. When I go to the pharmacy, most of the time it's to an Arab-owned and Arab-managed pharmacy. Yeah, bro, there's a lot of common ground between our people. There's a lot of common ground. There's misunderstanding, I think, also by both sides, that people like us who have an open mind and are reasonable and are not crazy extremists on the left or the right, the reasonable middle is reasonable, and we can find the reasonable solutions to this stupid, needless, pointless conflict that has been going on for so long, for so many generations. It is insane, and it only serves the interests of the people in charge. The Israeli leaders, many of whom are involved in revolving door, right? Politicians who become generals who become politicians, go back and forth, then they become consultants, and guess what? They also happen to own shares in defense contractor firms. Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. And so they make more money the more weapons are used. Oh, what a coincidence. What an ironic coincidence. It's not a coincidence. They have an interest in seeing the conflict continue. And they have a financial, personal interest in seeing the conflict go on. It's disgusting to say, but it's true. Palestinian leaders, the same thing. Oh, they happen to be Palestinian leaders, and they happen to be leaders of terrorist organizations, and they happen to be going on to consult for huge organizations and that make money feeding the Palestinian cause. Oh, they happen to own shares in massive cement and concrete companies and construction companies. Oh, what a coincidence. What a remarkable coincidence that the Palestinians are led by people who make money from the big industries that sustain their society. What a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. I wish we could have one state with Palestine and Israel in one government and one country living peacefully. That would be so amazing for the region. Yeah, well, I don't know if we can have... Listen, I'm actually all for having one country where Israelis are Israeli and Palestinians are Palestinian, and we each have our own passports and identity cards and nationalities, and we live by our own laws. Meaning we have different laws. Different laws for the Israelis, different laws for the Palestinians. I don't care if it's one country or two countries. I don't care. It could be one country. There doesn't need to be a state of Palestine in my book. There doesn't need to be a physical land. Where you live is your property. But it doesn't need to be a specific defined piece of land, because that's not what the stupid conflict is about. The stupid conflict is about the right of the people that have a claim to live here in peace and in prosperity. And that goes for the Jews, who have a clear ancestral claim on this land. And it goes for the Arabs who live here, who want to call, if they want to call themselves, you want to call yourself Palestinian, call yourself Palestinian. Bro, I got nothing against it, man. But if it was one country, it can't be called Israel or Palestine. Well, it's going to be called Israel or Palestine. It's not going to be, as long as there's Israel here, it ain't going to be called Palestine. As long as there's Palestinians, it's not just going to be called Israel. So it's been one globe push forever. Yeah, no, I would be all for, we all live in one world and we're all just human beings. Unfortunately, the world is still more divided than that. But I agree with you, Mohammed. It would be amazing if we could all live just in peace on our lands, in peace, and not fight, because the fighting is idiotic. I don't think it's a big dilemma. There was actually a very interesting debate on the server of one of these Discord servers of somebody that does Israel content the other day. And the idea, and I suggested a completely radical solution. I said, look, if you want radical change, you got to have radical means to it. And okay, I on purpose was saying some very radical things, not killing people. Yeah, nothing like that. Not like we should go to war with them or something like that. Nothing like that. Other radical means that were planned by the CIA against Russia and planned by Russia against America, the KGB against America back during the Cold War. They never did it, but they planned it. It didn't involve killing anybody. It involved mind-expansive experiences en masse for a sustained period of time to change the way people think. And anyway, there were other people in the conversation, and to be honest, they came up with relatively reasonable ideas, which would be, what if Judea and Samaria and Gaza and the Golan would all essentially become micronations? I mean, states, proper countries, but like 4 separate states. So we'd have more states, not less, for the different tribes. So basically solving the problems without having to create one state and another, and we'd create 4 little nations. Anyway, it's a long debate. I don't want to get into that whole thing, but it was a very interesting conversation. I'll be happy to get into those details if you want. If you want to know about it, leave a comment or something, and I'll think about making that discussion more open. But it was a very interesting discussion among people who talk about this stuff all the time. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for the pleasant conversation. To all of you, I appreciate it. I really do. I am not here to make controversial content to get clicks and all that views crap. I don't do that. I mean, look at my lovely no background. I'm not exactly focusing on production value of the video here and the wow effects. I'm just here to speak and have conversations with people who want to actually do something positive. Because we can be in our echo chambers forever. That will never move the ball forward. It's when we build bridges that we can actually move the ball forward. That's it. Right? We need to connect with people on the other side of the conflict. I need to connect with more people on the other side of the conflict. People on the other side of the conflict need to connect more with people on my side of the conflict. That's how we do this. Our leaders are not going to change unless we change who they are. They're not going to end this conflict. They are too well entrenched. We need to be the change, and the way we do that is by we connecting, and among us, some leaders will rise. And I don't have political ambitions to be that leader. I'm not some crazy egomaniac. You know, if the country asked me to serve in some role, would I do it? Yeah, sure, but it's maybe, right? Probably not. I would probably recommend a million other people before myself. Yeah, crap in, crap out. George Carlin. George Carlin was a genius wordsmith. He was amazing. And if you look back at the words he said in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and O's, they're more true today than they ever were. Right? It's a big club and you ain't in it, right? For example. He was a genius. Anyway, guys, thank you again. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Trivgun. Thank you, everybody that's been here and messaging. I really appreciate it. As you can tell, I have a massive channel. Just kidding. Like, nobody ever watches my videos, so I'm shocked and amazed whenever anybody shows up, and I love it. You guys are awesome. If you want other people to know about this, you know, you're supposed to like it or whatever, subscribe. Apparently that tells YouTube to tell other people to do to watch the videos. But I mean, again, I don't care if 500 people or 10,000 people show up, except unless it can actually help drive the conversation forward. I don't want to attract people who are just going to sit here and bitch and fight all day. That's not what I want. But of course, some people who are like that will naturally find videos like this at some point and come and argue. If they do, they do. But my point in this content that I make when I talk about this topic, which is not all the time, as you'll notice if you look at my content, I talk about crypto, I talk about marketing, I talk about business, I talk about other things. But when I do talk about this topic, I'm not doing it to just rage bait and piss people off and be more controversial than the other. No. I do it because I'm looking for reasonable people to build bridges with. Yes, SEO titles are probably still king. Yeah, and I do SEO for customers. I'm a marketer, so. But I don't do that stuff. I mean, do I? I don't know. You tell me. Are my titles very clickbaity? No, I kind of. What is the title for today's video? Israel at war with Hamas, Hizbullah, Houthis, and more. Right? It's a fact. I'm not. Israel is unfortunately at war with all those places, and it's terrible for everybody who has to suffer the consequences, you know, large and small. And I'm hearing more booms. Hopefully they're not, but I think they are. Anyway, guys, be safe, be prosperous, be healthy, be happy. Love you all. Shalom. Peace.